Guys, it's Manga time once again. I'm here today to bring you my review of Bleach 649, the Theatre Suicide Scene 3. And yeah, this is another really good chapter in the Shunsui fight. Luckily, he's getting a very good fight. It's looking like to be quite a lengthy one as well. It could even reach the lengths of Miri versus Pernida at this rate. So that would be really nice. And before we begin, guys, I'd appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. That'd be super great. We're almost at 700 subscribers, and if we made it, that'd be really amazing, and I'd super appreciate the support. So basically it starts off with Lille sinking to the bottom of the Dangyo Abyss, which was the third act of Shunsui's Bankai, Katen Kyokotsu Karamatsu Shinju. And Lille's kind of sinking, and the blood is obviously streaming from his eyes and his nose because he's covered in Shunsui's disease that he started. So yeah, Lille's kind of falling to the ground in his rather strange looking Volstendig, and he suddenly decides, forget this, I'm gonna fly up and survive. And he starts, dashing towards what appears to be the surface. And I'm still not sold on Shinsui's Bankai being underwater. That still doesn't. I don't think that's still not really certain it fits. I would have personally liked it to have been like they were just plunged into deep shadow, and then, the shadows are like holding on to them and pulling them down, because I think that might, not necessarily represent despair and depression better. I just think it would fit Shinsui's Zanpakuto better, because Shinsui's Zanpakuto already has shadow powers. There's never been any sign of water whatsoever, so I still think it's a bit random, to be honest. However, I do like the imagery behind Lille trying to reach the surface and the light breaking the surface, and Lille just not quite being able to make it. But yeah, he thinks to himself, no matter how much I move my wings, I just keep moving further and further away from the surface. Then somehow Shunsui is able to hear his thoughts, because he replies to him. He says, well, of course, this is we've technically thrown ourselves into the water. It's now too late to be flapping your wings. But then I understand why you do such a thing. And Shunsui is standing on top of one of the now underwater buildings, and I do want to see. I want to know how this works. Like, how is this water? Is there like a huge cube of water in the area where Shunsui is, or is it kind of the sky is dark everywhere else, and then like the closer you get to Shunsui, suddenly you're underwater? I think that might be more likely. I don't know. But anyway, Shunsui says, after all, they do say that the moment you're in cold water, your resolution goes down along with your temperature. So he's basically saying that Lille has almost given up, but that's because that's the idea of his Zanpakuto. So, Shunsui says there's a limit to how shameful one man can get, and he says, a man makes a promise but doesn't keep it, and a woman that couldn't forget her love for him. And at this point, these two arms appear behind Shunsui, and I was getting excited at this point, because I was like, we're going to see the woman, that shadowy woman that we saw when he first activated his Bankai. And then Shunsui says, isn't that what it was? Sakura Nosuke. And I don't know if that's what he's calling his Zanpakuto, or if she's calling him that. I honestly have no idea. I have no idea who's talking here. The only clue is that Shinsui's mouth isn't open, so maybe is Katen Kyokotsu calling him that. But yeah, there's a really lovely panel here. It looks awesomely cool, of Shunsui just standing there with his two swords, and then the woman Katen Kyokotsu draped over his shoulder. And yeah, it is the form from the Zanpakuto arc, which is really cool. So Shunsui says, it's been a long time, Ohana, which is basically a familiar term, almost essentially meaning my flower. And it's really cool seeing this, because she has literally been ripped straight from the Zanpakuto Rebellion arc from the anime, which is really cool, because she has a great design. And another cool thing about this is one of the few Zanpakuto spirits we've actually seen in the manga. I'm pretty sure we've only seen 3 of them, I want to say. Ichigo, Renji, and now Shunsui. So, she's like, oh, someone's getting over familiar calling me Ohana. That's rich from a master that only plays whenever he feels like it. And, Shinsui's like, don't be so cold, please forgive me. And, she says, oh, look, your kimono's been all torn up. Well, that's what happens when you walk around wearing something that belongs to another woman. Whoa. So, basically, everyone has a lot of theories that Shunsui used to have a lover who somehow died. And he either took or she gave him this kimono, and this is a step towards that theory being true. The kimono did belong to a woman, and that's interesting because it does look like we're going to get that flashback in this fight. I think now that we're already starting to allude to it, because that's what Kubo does these days. He, if we're going to get a flashback, he will start to allude to it very, very vaguely in chapters preceding that flashback, and that seems to be the same pattern that's going along here. So that I definitely would like to see that flashback. Anyway, Shinsui's like, you're pretty mean as usual, and Katen Kyokotsu's basically like, I might be mean, but I'm your sword after all. I've taken every woman fancy of yours, and have sworn to be by your side to the very end, no? And I think this is really cool. It's really cool seeing Shunsui talking to his Zanpakuto spirit. Lille, of course, can't see this, and he's like, who are you talking to? Now, something that bugs me a little bit about it, the way Kubo draws lately, is that it's really hard to tell how much a fight has taken its toll on the Shinigami. Because Kubo doesn't... seems to be either forgetting to draw wounds on them, which makes them look completely unharmed, or the wounds just don't look as bad anymore. Like now, Shinsui's Hayori basically looks a bit burnt, where he supposedly had his side blown out. And maybe that's down to the way he's standing, but it looks like he's been having this very, very, very dangerous fight with Lille for ages now, and all he's got is a scratch on his side and a scratch on his shoulder. It's like Kubo used to draw it so that the blood would still be like gushing down his shoulder, and there's nothing there, so it looks like Shinsui's barely taken any damage. And it bugs me. It happens a lot in fights these days in Bleach. Like the Mayuri one, for instance. Mayuri blew off his whole arm and there should have been blood everywhere, but there was just a couple of burn marks. I don't know if it's Kubo can't be bothered to draw blood anymore as much as he used to, but I don't know really. It doesn't look... It just makes it look like the Shinigami come out of fights better than they should be, than they actually are. But anyway, Lille says, did you really think you'd won this? Speaking of blood, Lille has a lot of it in his face. He is literally running down his face at this point, and it's quite dark. Basically, Lille says, as if something like a Shinigami's Bankai could kill me, typically being quite arrogant. Shunsui then sheaths his Zanpakutos, and he then moves his hand off of the hilt of one of them, and this thin white line follows his fingers. Lille's kind of rushing towards him, and Shunsui's like reciting almost a poem, I think. He says, the cruelty of a woman's love that goes unknown to a man, and then he says, and what shines at the end of the tunnel is the white thread that symbolises regret. The least I can do for you is cut that thread, and we see him basically moving his hand, and this white thread is following it. It's really nicely done, actually. It looks really cool. And he says, that unsightly regret circling around you. This is the end. This is the final stage. Now, does this imply that this is the final ability of Shunsui's Bankai? Because if so, I won't deny that I feel it's been mostly underwhelming. It has been. It's very cool and very theatrical, but if this is really all it does, I would have loved to have seen more shadows involved. I do, however, like his Zanpakuto spirit appearing. That's very cool. And basically, this attack is called Thread Cutting Scissors on a Bloody Throat. That's a really cool name for an attack. But essentially, all the attack is he appears behind Lille, with his hand out like that, and this black line just slices Lille across the throat. And that's actually very cool, and it really, really reminds me of Yamamoto, actually, when he did his Nadagiri attack on Wonder Weiss, how it was just like one big white page and him doing a motion. Really reminds me of that. Again, however, it looks like Shunsui is not hurt. It looks like he's not hurt. There's no blood or anything from any of the attacks he's taken. So it looks like we're like 6 chapters into the fight and he hasn't taken a hit, which it annoys me. It annoys me. However, Lille, his throat has now been slashed, and then all of a sudden his fucking face blows up, basically. This is one of the goriest things we've ever seen in Bleach. The only reason it's not super gory is because there's no like blood or anything. It's just a ball of light. But Lille's face like lifts up and his throat is like pulled down, and this ball of light just kind of bursts out of the cut, and it's like, Christ. Presumably his face explodes. Either way, he's been decapitated essentially, because he loses this. I think the top half of his body basically blows up, and he falls to the ground. So he no longer has a head, and he basically disappears into the darkness. And Shunsui watches him fall, and then he collapses himself, and blood is now coming out of his mouth and stuff. Whether or not it's the toll taken from the Dangyo Abyss, or if that final stage of his Bankai causes him to take some serious damage, I don't know. But he's caught by Katen Kyokotsu either way. And, he's like, oh, to think I'd get a chance to sleep on your lap. Maybe I should Bankai once, or, maybe I should Bankai more often. And she tries to hit him. And I think it's funny because, despite all the sinisterness that's been going on, he is still the same Shunsui at the end of the day. And he's like, it was a joke. I only have one eye left. And Katen says, we both look the same and both of us are so strange. And then she says, but either way, at least we've won. And that's a cool picture as well. It's all kind of shadowed, but it's just her sitting there. And it's a really cool image. And Shunsui's like, what's wrong? You're being very docile today. And she's like, oh, shush already. And just as Shunsui looks like he's about to say something rather poignant, he says, Ohana, I. Just as he's about to say it, he gets blasted through the fucking chest. Literally, he's lying on the ground and this huge light blasts through the chest. And they're obviously very, very shocked. Shunsui's like, oh, fuck. Rather foolish of Shunsui not to check that Lille was dead, but then frankly, he didn't check Stark was dead either. It seems like he kind of has a lot of faith, maybe, in his Zanpakuto abilities, perhaps foolishly, that when he thinks they're dead, they just drop to the floor. In Shunsui's defense, one of the only ways to definitely kill someone in Bleach is to cut their head off. And he did that to Lille, and Lille is defying that because Lille's basically on a divine plane at this point. Lille is essentially a god, or at least as he calls himself, he's a messenger of God, he's an angel. Which is why he's able to come back from these death-defying abilities. And Lille did say that in his Volstendig, not his resurrection, in his Volstendig, he would be able to survive everything. So I like that Kubo's making good on that, because that pisses me off as well. When Kubo says, oh, let's take Askin for example. Oh, I can never die. Oetsu kills him in the chapter later. Lille going, oh, nothing you do will hurt me in this form. Well, it has hurt him, but at least he hasn't died. Anyway, he appears in the sky above them. Again, very angelic, but almost demonic in its form. And he's like, I told you so, I told you so. And he's like starting to be rebuilt. And then the last panel is really kind of creepy. He's like, Shinigami's Bankai is not something that could kill a messenger of God. And his face is reforming from beams of light. It's very artistic, but very creepy. And I think when he fully reforms, he's going to look slightly different. Because he has a mouth again now, and he didn't have a mouth in his last form. So I think he might be looking slightly different now. His eyes also look slightly different. If that's how they end up looking when he's transformed or not, I don't know. But, yeah, that's the end of the chapter, and that's a pretty crazy end. I would like to see what Shunsui is going to say to Katen Kyokotsu, if it's going to be something about his Heiori. If it's going to be something about his past, that'd be cool. I hope we get Lil Barrow's past as well. The fight does seem to be waning down a bit. Nanao still needs to show up as well. I mean, what's going on there? Kubo wouldn't show her running to us if she wasn't just going to not appear. Also, if Shunsui says this is the last act, does that mean his Bankai is finished? In which case, how the fuck is he going to beat Lil Barrow? He's in serious trouble here. And I know a lot of people are disappointed that Shunsui's struggling so much against Lil. They feel he should have been, saved for fighting someone like Hashwolf. But the thing is with Hashwolf is that I think he's going to fight Uryu. I think he's going to fight Uryu and maybe Ichigo. Because Hashwolf's a major, major villain. Shunsui, although he's the captain commander, isn't going to fight the second main villain. Although I did want to see Shunsui and Okitake team up against Yuhava in revenge for killing Yamamoto. I still think that should have happened. Anyway, guys, I'm going to drop a 4.5 out of 5 on this week's chapter. I'm really enjoying this fight. It's very theatrical. The imagery is really good. And just like Shunsui, it's very artistic as well. There's a lot going on that's very cool in this battle. I'm really, really enjoying it. Shunsui is just a fundamentally more interesting character than Mayuri, in my opinion. So out of the Elite battles so far, this is definitely my favourite. However, Pernida is probably more interesting than Lil. I still think Lil is a bit boring. He's a bit cookie cutter. He's very much just the arrogant bad guy. But there's still time for him to do something very cool. But either way, the Elite fights so far have been really good. They've been on almost a completely different level to the other Stomata battles so far. Let me know in the comments below, guys, what you thought of this week's chapter, and what are you thinking of the battle so far? Did you like seeing Katen Kyokotsu, and did you think it was cool that it was her anime depiction? And do you like the Bankai? What do you think of Shunsui's Bankai, if this really is the end of it? Let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe, guys, I'd super appreciate it, and give me a thumbs up, that'd be awesome. Until next time, though, guys, see you later.